What's up guys, my name's Andre and welcome to a new video. Today, welcome to HangoutChat episode number 3, or whatever the episode is, I can't even remember at this point. Today's not going to be a gameplay, it's going to be a video out here in my garage talking about the moped. And what happened to it in this time that I was messing with it and it went to the mechanic and all sorts of things. So essentially, mechanically, what was happening was the bearings in the engine were shot. There was play on the crankshaft and the seals were blown, so I was having a false air intake on the crankcase. So that's why I was never able to tune the carburation, the mixture, because depending on the load I was carrying on the engine speed, the rotation of the engine, the temperature of the engine, everything was, all of these factors of the engine that are not related to carburation were affecting carburation because of the blown seal on both sides of the crankcase, letting area in. I was even leaking oil from this side, from the magneto side, because it was just so blown. And the bearings were super shot. I had luck that the engine just didn't seize all of a sudden when I was riding it, because the bearings were just completely shot. On the good hand, yes, the guy who sold it to me did in fact rebuild the top part of the engine, not the bottom part of the engine. So I was lucky that the cylinder, the piston, and the piston head are brand new. The guy really went to I do not know the name of the workshop that does this type of job. They really rebuilt the top half of the engine, but they didn't change the bearings and the seals, which is like the most important part. The mechanic, when he opened it up, he was actually surprised at just how well the engine was cared for inside. Like it really does look brand new. In fact, I think that just now I'm about halfway through the breaking in process, because it's just, the engine was just so new when he opened it up. Since he closed it, I rode 152 kilometers with this. It's almost 100 miles with the engine since he changed the bearings and closed the engine. So everything is just nice and loose now, as it should be on the engine, but it's supposed to get better. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have it to make it any better, because I'm changing the cylinder. I sold the Asus P60 SE. So what I'm doing is I'm changing this frame, which is condemned, and I'm putting a 75cc kit on this engine. Of course, taking all the needed procedures to not blow the rest of the engine up when I have a 75cc block on it. But the problem with this frame is that it's condemned, because the engine supports, as I talked about, as I said on the second episode, I believe, the engine supports, they're just not right. Look at it. Look at that. So the engine is tilted. I bet you can see that right there. Just how much that engine is tilted. It's not supposed to be that way. So what ends up is that I end up losing a lot of energy in the form of heat on the belt, because it's just wearing down the belt, even though it's already worn. It's even pieces of it just going everywhere. You can see right there. It's just coming apart. That's why I'm using it, because if I put the new belt in there, the variator just doesn't work properly, because the new belt is supposed to be used on a frame that's aligned properly, and mine isn't, so it just doesn't work. All right, now this is going to be just on the main camera, because I want to talk about this. So this moped is based on a French design by Moped. I didn't know all this stuff until yesterday when I was searching for MBK AV10 on YouTube, that I started to see what this was all about. So what happened, Moped came up with this design in the 70s or 60s, and in Brazil we had two bicycle manufacturing companies, Caloi and Monarch. And essentially what they did is that they licensed the Moped design and imported it to Brazil, and so these parts started to be manufactured in Brazil. So everything in here is Brazilian made to some degree. Even the engine. My engine is not an original AV10 engine, but a Brazilian modified or a Brazilian made AV10 engine. And this is in fact a Monarch moped because it says on the rear, and because the fuel tank is under the seat instead of being the actual frame. Although on actual Monarchs, the fuel line just doesn't hang out of the frame like this. They use the lower half of the frame as the fuel tank, because there's a little entrance right here. So you would fill it up. This wouldn't be the main tank. This would be the auxiliary tank that would be connected through a hose to here, and so they would use just this lower part of the frame as the fuel tank, because there is an outlet, a fuel outlet on the other side of the frame, that if it wasn't all rusted up on the inside, I could have just connect a hose between the auxiliary and the frame and use that output in there. Now you can see that my fuel line is far from proper. It's just a garden hose and a silicone hose just hanging out in here, although I do have an a gasoline filter. On 2 strokes, you have to remember that on the throttle you not only have the gas control, but you also have the oil control, so you can't go downhill for too long with the throttle closed. Otherwise you could risk seizing the engine, because you're just basically cutting all fresh lubrication from the engine when you close the throttle. That's why people blip the throttle when they're going downhill and using engine brake. Now this frame has a couple of issues, and that's why I'm changing it. First of all, here on, I'm going to try to bring this up on the camera again. Let me just download the footage from this phone, or I can just get the other camera. I wouldn't mind just taking a picture. So let's take a picture. So you can see on the picture that there's a lip around a spacer that centers this rod that I put my feet on. So there's a lip with a spacer in there. The other side doesn't have this lip because they just cut it off for some odd reason. So this spacer just hangs in there on the breeze and causes a lot of play, even laterally. And when the variator is trying to work, there's a lot of jittering in there. It's horrible. It's really horrible. So this frame is condemned because of the engine support, and because of this major factor in here that it's just not worth fixing, right? So what's going to happen to this, I don't know. I'm going to leave it to the mechanic. It's probably going to get scrapped. The frame that I'm going to put in here is going to be a brand new frame. I'm going to spend about $100 on a new frame for this. People are telling me, oh, you shouldn't get this because it's you're being stupid. It's worth more for you to sell this and use the money you're going to invest on this to purchase an actual motorcycle. And the problem is, it's a lot more work to do the other thing. Seriously, I have to put an ad listing online, expect someone to come up with an offer of a motorcycle, which is never going to happen for this, unless I am extremely lucky, or unless I have a whole load of connections, which I do not. So for me, since this works, I know that it works now that I stabilized the engine and stabilized the carburation, because it's all new parts. There's no reason that it will fail if I take care of it, which I am taking care of it. So I'm going to change the frame, put a 75cc block on it. It's still going to be quite a weak engine, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot better than the 50cc block that I have in here. Which, you can see, there is compression, good compression in here, but it's easy to overturn the compression with my hand. So imagine how strong the explosion of that is. It's just not very fast. So I'm going to put the 75cc block on it. It's going to give it a nice boost, because there is a difference on power strokes between 2-stroke engines and 4-stroke engines. Once I put the 75cc block in here, it's going to act up more or less like a 115cc 4-stroke engine, which is a great deal of power. It's still going to be weak, because people will complain too much that Suzuki 125s have low torque and this and that. So if I can have an engine of this size, that and a chassis like an entirety of the thing that's so light like this thing weighs about 70 kilograms. You can convert it to pounds for those who are in America. It's a very light chassis. The entire thing is pretty light compared to an actual motorcycle right there. That's a Dafra Horizon that my father is modifying. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot better than an actual motorcycle, like 110cc or 125cc four-stroke. It's going to run more than those bikes probably, because the entire thing is a lot lighter. It's a two-stroke engine, so the engine itself is lighter. There are no valves to go out of adjustment. The engine itself, this 50cc engine, makes miracles. It does miracles. I don't know how you say that. It's amazing what it can do. Now, this is the original exhaust, and when it's perfectly sealed up in here at the end, it makes for a very, very silent engine. It's actually quite amazing how silent it is. I just didn't like it because I can't really hear how fast the engine is revving. So what I did, I put a nut on the inside and a nut on the outside and removed the seal from it. And so I changed the engine note so that now it's not so silent. What I'm going to do, Jesus Christ. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my Zoom H1 and I'm going to let you hear the engine note of this 50cc moped and tell me what you think about it. It's a two-stroke 50cc. The engine is brand new. So I'll just take it off and I'll show you what happens. I'll have to bring the levels down a lot for this. Let's turn it on. Here we go. This thing's amazingly loud. And I can't get very close to the engine because the microphone goes haywire. I really can't go very close to the engine with the microphone because it goes haywire, because the magneto spinning is very, very strong, and the whole like ESR, the whole interference that the spark plug and the CDI causes on it just screws up with any microphone that comes close to this. But I hope you can have a taste of what this is and why I like it so much. I'll try to record me writing it so you can hear what it sounds like.